I guess so. That's. I guess what we're going to do now is put out some questions to the audience, and I believe the format, as agreed to, was that we let if any of the students would like to ask some questions first, and then we'll move it out to the general public as well. So obviously some interesting characters here up here. So if you want to ask any questions, fire away.
You're not a student. He's a student.
No? Okay. Well. Yeah.
My background is livestock. I'm a veterinarian. I do own farmland in Saskatchewan. I guess my concern is I just returned from Nebraska, eastern Nebraska, and a little lap through Ontario. All you see is corn, and more a little bit of soybean in there, and we are now growing soybean from Australia, Saskatchewan, and so it's monoculture. And then when I hear your presentations, the slight variation, I think it's all chasing a shrinking margin in commodities with no innovation on the side of, I think there's something correct on this, but I'll throw in no innovation on the side of soil management, from the micromanagement of soil. There's no talk of rotation away from animals. And it's, again, that's my bias in livestock, but tough one to sell. And I think especially a long-term investment in land, to bring that in is very tough. There's no management system to do that. So I'll throw that out,
Yep.
especially on the farmer's edge. If there's any interest in livestock, the high input side.
I mean, on the ag technology side of things, I mean, where we're looking at it, we see Canada is much more segregated, where either you're a livestock guy and you're focused on livestock, or you're a cropping guy and you're more focused on that. You don't see, not that there isn't, but you don't see it as much where there's mixed operations. But, you know, as we get more experience around the globe, it's very different. I mean, Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, you know, you see, especially in Australia, you know, the largest, you probably won't know this, but do you know where the largest black Angus herd is in the world? It's Central Russia. All that technology, the concept of has been imported from Alberta and Nebraska, and so we see that around information and data that these other markets we're going to need to be more focused around livestock. Management changes. I mean, I think our view is that you can collect data and figure things out. I mean, we think, you know, potential opportunities of what works where and why. I mean, I think that's exciting to us, that if you can take 3 or 4 or 5,000 farmers and you crunch all that information and you see what everybody's doing, and then you can start seeing management techniques that works in one part of the world. And then the question is, well, yeah, it works in Nebraska, but it won't work here. But then you start to understand, well, yeah, it will work there because in that particular area of Nebraska is pretty identical to your area. And these are the type of successes that they're having. And just as a small view of this, I mean, we collected a whole bunch of data from harvesters all around the world, and we analyzed it to get which combine had the most fuel efficiency. You know, the next, you know, push for us is, well, which one is the most fuel efficient based on the crop that they were combining and what region and so on and so forth. I mean, we think, in our view, is that you'll be able to kind of analyze that even further. We're early because I mean, the big issue that we see with farmers all around the world, nobody collects any information. Nobody puts it in the same area. Nobody keeps it consistent. And so our goal, hopefully, as our growth is, you know, we just want to make sure we're not going to make huge changes overnight until we get a lot of data and information collected, and then we can start to analyze that and hopefully be able to showcase to farmers around that, you know, this is what your peer is doing. Your peer may not be your next door neighbor. Your peer might be somebody that's a long ways away from you, and maybe those management expertise of what they do might be a good fit on your farm. On the soil side of it, I mean, I don't know if I can really comment on that. You probably could comment on that better than I. So
What we've done is
made sure that the technology is no-till. And the point of that was limit soil disturbance, limit the degradation of the soil was our number one goal. And my farming partner, he's big on intercropping and crop rotation. And he does a lot of that to keep his ground in a suitable situation. But from a machinery perspective, we made sure that we developed an opener system that limited the soil disturbance for the soil. And that's when we worked with UBC on that to make sure we could verify that we kept 90% of the soil surface undisturbed. And that's where no-till came to play on from that perspective as far as soil is concerned. And our view is if you put the right mixture of products in the ground in the right place, then you're not over-chemicalizing your ground and you're not adding unnecessary foreign elements to it if you do it right in the first place. Hundreds of years ago, you'd poke a hole in the ground with a stick, put a seed in it, close it, and it would grow beautifully. So we're trying to mimic that. I don't know if that addresses your question completely, but
And I think a little bit too is the question is nobody knows exactly what the right thing to do is. I mean, you know, I think to your point, you're seeing crop rotations go out the window. Some areas it's canola, snow is the rotation, and what is the impact actually to it? And I think, you know, if you're not measuring and monitoring, you don't really know. You know, farmers are they're business people. They have to make money in order to keep the farm alive, and so sometimes maybe the most sustainable practices, the best agronomic practices get put to the side more for economical decisions. And the issue over long term, maybe those decisions aren't the right economical decisions. Maybe over a period of time by, you know, canola, you know, there is an impact, but I don't know whether people really know that, you know, and I think that at the end of the day, you know, every field should almost be like a research farm to a certain degree, but nobody has time to measure all this stuff. So I think, you know, the question is, you know, how do you watch, how do you monitor, and then how do you make a decision after that? And I think, I mean, those are the kind of things that with precision agriculture going forward, everybody's going to have to adopt in order to do.
Just a quick comment. You know, as you know, we managed a large land portfolio for a decade, and we insisted on good crop rotations. We asked for records every year. You know, what did you grow? What chemicals did you apply? You know, what equipment did you use? So we had a good history on every quarter section of what was done there. And that was part of how we got a premium price from CPP when we sold to them, because we had a well-documented portfolio of well-maintained ground. And we knew that, you know, the underlying value of this asset that we had was in its productivity. And so we took steps to protect that productivity, you know, as landowners. And, you know, on the input business, you know, since then, you know, we base our, you know, we're looking for farmers who are doing the right things with their dirt, because you're right. I mean, monocrops, and you see occasionally farmers who, you know, the canola, snow, canola rotation, and you know, you hear a few examples of guys who've done that for a long time successfully, but you know, you hear lots more negative stories of disease emergence and so on, and you know, we want to control that. So.
My name is Chris. I'm a student here at the university, and my colleagues and I are looking to start a biotech company. So I was wondering, as you guys have all raised capital for your own startups, if you have any comments on the investing climate surrounding biotechnology or emerging disruptive technology. What's the best way to raise capital for, you know, an emerging startup in the agriculture sector, and how best to communicate the value of a technology to agriculture to investors?
Maybe I'll go first. You know, the best, call Rob LeClaire at Ag Funder. I mean, here's the local connection. So the CEO of Ag Funder, based in Silicon Valley, is from Calgary, and so he's a local guy. And you know, they have a lot of people on the team who can help assess deals, who know where capital is looking for particular kinds of deals, and huge networks to tap into. So they're a great resource, and I'm happy to put you in touch with Rob or anybody else. At the end of the day, you need to come up with an idea that that is marketable. I think that investors are very interested in things that touch the ag space. Since the food crisis of 2008-9 there, I think the world started to pay attention to the fact that, food matters. And, there are still some hungry people in the world, even though, we grow more than the world consumes. I've been in some countries where people are still starving. So we have distribution issues. We've got technology issues. There's lots of issues, and as a result of those issues, there's opportunities. So I encourage anybody who's entrepreneurial, and I know we talked before about some of the stuff you're working on. It's fantastic, and I encourage you to pursue that with everything you got.
Comment on going out and raising cow. I mean, I think the ag technology space is really hot right now. I mean, everybody's trying to find their way in some way. I would say that whether you do it through Ag Funder, which is I think a fantastic way, or I think maybe the mistake that we might have made in the beginning is that we didn't seek out that angel to start things out. We self-financed for a long time. That took us a long way. It took us a long time to get to a point where we were meaningful. So, I mean, I think that if you've got something interesting, now's the time to go. I would say the one thing that I think the problem with Canada around, there's not a lot of really good opportunities to find VC firms that want to invest into agriculture. And it pains me to see that, but I mean, when we went out and raised capital, other than Avrio, who was really important, but beyond them, there was nobody. And people, say, why would you go and take money from Silicon Valley? And just because there was nobody that would give you any money in on the Canadian side. So, I mean, Ag Funder may be able to help that. Maybe there's more people that are understanding the opportunity. Hopefully that, farmers, we feel that at least to a certain degree, maybe Farmers Edge can shed some light on the opportunity. There's really, really smart people in Western Canada that can do innovative things. You don't have to be from Waterloo or Silicon Valley. And but I would say that if you go looking for an investor, it'll be a struggle in Canada. That probably the best opportunity, as much as I hate to say it, is probably Silicon Valley. And like you said, Sandhill Road, there's a whole whack of them. But I mean, I always joke and say that I wear garlic when I go down to Silicon Valley to go meet with those folks, because they all like to take their pound of flesh from you. So, but
I think from my perspective, one of the challenges you have is credibility. Student, you've got some people around you who are ever smart, you've got a great idea. Who are you? What's your track records? First thing they ask, where have you been? What have you done? They're very reluctant to support a greenhorn, if you will, on something that they've come up with, unless you can bring credibility to what you're doing. And the way to bring credibility to what you're doing, and how I've done it in the past and how I did it with Clean Seed, is surround yourself with quality advisors that recognize what you're doing, they respect your ideas, and they become supporters of your ideas. So you form yourself an advisory board, and you put people around you that have historical credibility in the field that you're in. That naturally transcends and gives you credibility of what you're doing, because it's somewhat of an endorsement. Then one of the other components you can consider is the very university that you are in here. There is a lot of support for student initiatives that are tied to university support. I'm sure you can get support from the university. So if you can surround yourself, like when we went to UBC, part of the driver behind that was to bring credibility to the opener that we designed, because there was an endorsement from the student or from the academic body that what we say was a reality. Surround yourself with people that are qualified in the space that you are entering, and that will help you in garnering attention from investors. And the first ones will be your mom, your dad, your brother, your uncle, your aunt, and your best friends. Once you get that going and you develop your plan, then you may get more attraction from other parties. Surround yourself with as much credibility as you can.
great advice. I mean, I can't agree more than that. And the ability of what those people will do for you, the doors they'll open. I mean, we didn't have that in the beginning. We didn't have a lot of guidance. So yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. should have been in this room 10 years ago. It would have been more helpful for me.
It's just one last comment, and this goes to Wade's point about Canada versus other places. In Canada, we haven't seen agriculture as an investable asset class for a long time. Some of that's because of how we've structured the industry. I think supply management doesn't lend itself well to investor participation. There's a lot of things I could get into on that front. But I remember, I have a very clear memory of going to a global agriculture investment conference in London, in the UK, in about 2007. And there were people there from all over the world. And we like to say in Western Canada about how we feed the world. Well, there were two of us there from Canada. It was us and the Canadian Wheat Board. And don't get me started.
Yeah, so in our universe, obviously, it's public markets, and in the venture space, and obviously, Wade makes a great point about the VC setup in Canada is just it's so barren here, and to add to the problems, because to pick up that slack, you would expect what we call TSX Venture, or even the more junior exchange, the Canadian Stock Exchange, CSE, which actually will look at companies of your startup stature, right? But these markets have been so bombed out by the meltdown in resources, and it's probably going to take about a year or two, but that may set you up okay. Like if all other kind of avenues, once you get to a certain level of kind of angel funding, and to the things that Brad was referring to, and Ag Funder and stuff like that, and there is a chance, but like I say, it's going to take about maybe 2-3 years for these markets to repair, but it is in the longer term a potential option for you. And at that time, I expect Clean Seed to be at about $4 a share. I expect Input Capital to be at about $10 a share, and then these guys are going to be super wealthy, and they're going to give you a ton of money.
It's a funny point, actually. My company, when you look it up, is called Clean Seed Capital Group. And people have asked me, why is it called Clean Seed Capital Group? The original plan was to have an incubator fund for ag, to do what you're doing. And it just so happened that all the money that I put together that was self-funded myself to be diversified ended up poured into this one asset because it got a life of its own. And the technologies under Clean Seed Agricultural Technologies. But I think we all recognize here that there's a need for incubator funds to be able to support people that come up with ideas. I've got mixed emotions on angel investors. I tend to call them devil investors because they usually, you go in and then you get some of their cash, but you don't own much of what you've created after that. So be careful with the angel investor market.
There's a lot of talk in other industries.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
go ahead.
So there's a lot of talk in other industries about using intelligent agents to calculate throughput and profitability and that sort of thing. Is there a lot of that happening in the agricultural sector right now?
Intelligence agents.
Intelligent agents, like essentially very simplified AIs that run massive numbers of permutations of different inputs to calculate a possible range of outputs.
I guess that's your...
Wade, that sounds
That's
like
right up
your
your alley.
wheelhouse.
Mike over to Kevin, that he'd probably be able to talk to you better about that. So, yeah, I mean,
And by the way, you've exposed all our ignorance right there.
I mean, I think that's the goose we're chasing. I mean, that our view is that there's a huge opportunity in agriculture about, if you could increase yield potential by 15% based on figuring out, the right rate, the right time. I mean, I think in Farmer's Edge in the early stages, we went out and we did variable rate. And when it was just me and Curtis, and I knew the fields as good or better than the farmer did, I knew where to put the fertilizer and where not to put the fertilizer. I knew the climatic conditions. I knew everything. And then as we grew, we started to lose that sort of touch to the field. And then we had to make a lot of, gut instinct decisions. And so we went from, batting 100% on every field and every farmer was happy to suddenly, holy mackerel, we're losing some of this. We're not winning all the fields anymore. How could this be? The magic is gone. And I think what we learned is that, data and information is going to drive the decision. What works in Pilot Mound, Manitoba on a field doesn't necessarily work in Lethbridge. Never mind, it might not just work, down the road based on your management and the type of variety, the climate. And so I think, what gets me excited is I think Monsanto understands that. I think, for me, I think there's a tremendous opportunity around that. I mean, I think and it's sort of taking a lot of the old science that's already been done, but sort of focusing it on a field and using those fields as essentially, its own laboratory. So I mean, I think our view is that decision ag is going to be extremely important. It'll be the next big thing. When you talk about what GMOs did for agriculture, and I was an agronomist dealing with conventional canola and trying to keep the weeds from taking the whole crop, to Roundup Ready coming in and changing everything, and seeing having a farmer talk about, well, I saw 35 bushel yield on my canola field in one spot. That's pretty exciting to, if you're not getting 45 or 50 across the whole field, you're not doing too well. But I think genetics are starting to top out, and I think that Monsanto knows that. I think DuPont knows that, and I think that, but where we do see opportunity, I find it interesting. You'll talk to one farmer and he'll talk about one variety of wheat, and he'll say, it's the best variety I've ever had. And you go 30 miles down the road, another guy will grow that variety, and he'll say, that's the worst variety I ever had, and I'm never going to grow it. And why is that? I mean, how much different, is it? I think it's correlated to lots of different things that are not focused on the genetics. It's probably the wrong variety put in the wrong field, or so I think the big thing's going to be is you're going to need lots of data. You're going to need lots of information in order to do all that work. Number one is that the farmer isn't going to do it. His job is to plant, seed, spray, harvest, get it to the bin, get it to the elevator. He's not going to take time and energy to do all this. He doesn't have that. Doesn't have the expertise. But if you can show him a decision that impacts his bottom line by 10 or 15 or 20%, they're going to adopt to this. I mean, I remember, seeing no-till. I was in an area where 30% of the farmers were doing no-till, and we were, my dad didn't, and neighbor did, and he would say, well, look at those crazy guys. They don't have any more yield than I do, until one year we got a dry year, and they yield twice as much as us. And then overnight, everybody started to. And so I think that's the type of stuff that will need to happen, that we sort of say, the farmers say, so what? Oh, it's cool, you put weather stations out, you do this. Show me what this is going to do. Show me that this is going to make me money. And I think, once we deliver on that promise, you'll see things move quickly then.
Hello, my name is Rehana. I'm a master's student at the University of Lethbridge with a background in agronomy. I'm wondering to know if I want to run my own business and have my own farmland. My question is kind of in continuation of this question. Where is the start point and what should I do? And does agility program found a side project that is different from my master's thesis? I have kind of innovation in my project and I really want to run it. Thank you in advance.
Okay.
And I'm an international student, I'm not Canadian. In case.
Having started on farm.
Sorry, the question is,
Starting your own farm, correct?
oh, you got to talk to this guy then.
I can't speak much to the agility program because I don't know lots about that. But we see young people starting farms, and it's just like from my point of view, it's really like any business. You go and you find in any other business you might rent a storefront. Well, in a farm you'd rent some land and get started doing what you want to do. And I don't know whether your plan involves a big farm or a small farm, but you know, there are lots of places where land is available for rent, and you know, there would be you know, your own capital plus, you know, maybe some family money or you know, some investor money that you might use to get started. And so much of getting started is just getting started. And I think you know, a lot of people can spend a lot of time planning, and I'm not saying don't plan, but what will show that you're an entrepreneur is if at some point you decide to stop analyzing and you just get started and use whatever resources you have at your disposal. And I know that's not a very specific answer to your question, but you know, I'd need to know more specifics about what your ideas are.
Do you want to get into farming to farm crop, or do you have an idea and a technology you want to test?
Well, or perhaps also maybe, you know, there on this kind of more, you know, boutique farming stuff. Like the other day, actually, this hemp seed deal showed up, you know, on our desk, and you know, so there's kind of a lot of interesting variations and niches that sort of maybe a young person could start up at. Is there? Have you seen any sort of, you know, buzz or attraction in this kind of, you know, some of the more boutique stuff that would be smaller scale, at the outset maybe cottage industry style, you know what I mean?
Maybe more at Ag Funder than in what I do day to day. What I do day to day is I deal with, you know, 4 to 10,000 acre kind of size farms, but at Ag Funder we see all sorts of agriculture projects, from small plots to rooftop farming to indoor farming, and you know, it might be a good place to go and look and see what others are doing and trying to get going there, and you know, that might help inform your decisions about how you go down the track to do what you'd like to do.
I can speak to the agility program. So I'm Anil Pereira. I wasn't smart enough to stay here in Lethbridge where I graduated, so I had to move to Silicon Valley. But the agility program can help you. We have scholarships and fellowships and innovation grants as financial support. We have people we can connect you with as mentors, right? So Reed is it info at agilityuleth.ca? agility@uleth.ca. Email us, and we'd love to, for all the students here, right, help you out. That's the program we want to run, right?
Can we ask what part of the world that you're from?
Do you have family in agriculture?
Did you see the Anthony Bourdain show on Iran, Parts Unknown, when he went and traveled the country and he was eating all this great food? It was quite spectacular, actually.
I'm often surprised to hear that my students invest in anything, because when I went through school, I just lived hand-to-mouth. And they seem to have money and they invest in things, but they don't invest in farm things. I'm always amused when I see the BMO saying, you should start putting your money away now, because you're going to be retiring and being dead soon, so you should get that going. And they totally miss the undercurrent, you know, of Web 2.0, student rebellion against top-down investor directions and recommendations. And they already make investments, and they do it through Kickstarter. And they invest in some of the worst stuff that's ever invested in. They make terrible decisions, but they do it because they understand the environment that they're in. They say, this one has the potential of changing the world, or this one can. Kickstarter's got it now, and so you just go there, and it's like Dragon's Den, but without all the attitude, right? So, maybe just a comment, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy you say these things because, you know, a few years ago, well, when I started out my career, I worked at the bank-owned firms. And I'm not at a bank-owned firm anymore. And I can connect with some of the things that you're saying. You know, we see, you know, the investment pitches, like investing is turned into this commoditized experience. And you said it, you said top down. And I totally agree. But I think there's a happy medium between sort of, you know, trapping that sort of that growth that's viable, that's actually a viable investment, right? As opposed to, you know, losing all your money, right? And that's where you get into the whole arguments of diversification and all that kind of stuff. But you're absolutely right. And just as an example, say about 4 years ago, there was a company out of Saskatoon that was going to revolutionize the world with canola protein isolate, right? And of course, all us dummies from out east, we thought, man, this is going to be great. And $100 million of money into that company, and at one point a $500 million market cap. And, you know, there were certain milestones met, built this thing up, and it ended up at zero. And now I go on Google, I can't even find out who ended up with the patents of this stuff, you know? So, and then more recently, we had a publicly traded company that was the only canola crusher west of the Rocky Mountains. What's the name, Brad? Legumex Walker, right? And they took a good run at it. It was, you know, the expeller press, non-GMO, all the cool boutique-y, you know, feel-good things. And in the end, it was a brutal investment, right? But there are, you know, ways. And I think, you know, as an example, Clean Seed and Input are interesting. These people are changing what's happening out there, all three panelists. And so I think that's really, this is the happy medium, I believe. But the students are right. They have that right. It's okay to be idealistic. But I guess that's where somebody like myself has to come in with some old, you know, wisdom and say, look, I've been there before. I have the scar tissue. You know, here's how you might want to kind of, you know, deal with the situation, right, and sort of manage that. So with that, and over to David.
So we're cognizant of everybody's time. I'd like you to join with me in thanking our panelists today for their comments. We've been very pleased to have them here today. They are going to stick around. They're not running out. So those of you who want to ask a private question or a one-on-one, please make sure to do that. And again, I will remind you, there is a clipboard up here that if you're not already on our mailing list and you want to be for future events, come and sign up so that we don't miss you. Thank you all very, very much for coming and enjoying this event with us. And if you didn't get enough, we're doing the same event tomorrow night, 4 o'clock in Calgary at our campus in Calgary at Bow Valley Square. Well, you got to get the memo sooner or later. Thank you very, very much, everybody.